lovely back here in the 20s.
You know what's hilarious? We did all this and I had us
Except for
on
the
mute.
piercing, man. It gives you away.
All right,
Oh,
well.
man. All
Sorry,
right,
John.
guys. We're going to step back, do a little chat before we launch the show. So sit tight. We'll be right back.
Live?
We are live. Welcome to the Deciding Factor podcast, guys. And I actually have it unmuted this time. I'm John.
I'm Alton.
I'm Barbara.
Awkward moments already. So,
Yes.
Barb, what's our topic today?
We're talking about the news today. We're talking about how you, the listener, can decide what news outlets to trust. How do you decide who to listen to?
Nice. And you're going to give us all the great news about that, right?
Yeah, I think basically my conclusion is that you should just listen to the deciding factor. Like, I don't even know why you're bothered with anyone else. You know,
That's a great idea. I think I would go along with that. In fact, Alton, why don't you tell them what they should be doing right now?
They should be clicking bloop, 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 that like and subscribe button. And that way that they can see all of our craziness all the time. Following us on the socials, checking out our website.
Speaking of which,
it's not what I thought he was going to say. I thought he was going to be like, go eat some ice cream, or just for the
definitely that.
Yeah.
Or if you're in Texas, you can go grab you some Whataburger. Sorry, Barbara.
Way to rub it in. Sheesh.
Or Summer Moon. I've been around there a lot lately. But hey, feel free. You can move back down here to Texas and say screw Washington.
Pumpkins. Can we grow pumpkins here? I think we can.
I don't know. We can wear pumpkin-like
I don't think we can
though.
go. I don't think we can do cranberries, but we can definitely do pumpkins.
Okay. All right. Well, food for thought.
All right, guys.
Food for the okay.
I get it.
Out of the
I
day.
get it.
All right, guys. Stay tuned. This is the Deciding Factor podcast.
Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
Right,
No,
Barbara's
you
popping
can't
pills.
talk over the intro. I mute it there.
It's going to be fun.
Oh.
Get my lipstick ready.
I remember that part.
How's it look,
Got
guys?
the-
Am I ready
Natural.
for prime time?
I think you should have gone with purple, but hey, whatever. So, the media and the news. How are we getting our news sources? It looks like the big ones are obviously social media, television, newspapers / magazines, I guess. And, of course, you've got all these varieties to choose from, both local, state, U.S., worldwide. Where do you go? What do you do? Let's start out with, what do you actually currently listen to?
The Deciding Factor podcast.
Yeah. Do any of you guys still get the newspaper? Like an actual, that kind of gets your hands all black?
Negative.
What do you think my favorite thing to do is? Read, right? Yeah.
Yes, we
Well,
know
there's
that.
cartoons in the newspaper, is what I was thinking.
very
Like, I thought it
open-ended.
might be more your
There's no
bent, 'cause there's
SpongeBob on the newspaper. I'm not going to watch
Not
it.
like, oh my goodness. Comics. There's comic strips on the. Never mind. Okay. So, yeah, how do you guys take in your news?
Most of mine is through memes, if I'm honest. Memes of the
Really?
news. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, kind of one of the things that I was told at a very young age, like my parents weren't political, didn't really follow the news or anything, but a friend of mine's dad was like, hey, Alton, when you're listening to a radio show or watching something on TV, he goes, you need to know that everyone has a bias. It's just our nature. So what you should do is try to figure out what the bias is. And now you have a lens to interpret what they're saying with, right? And I was like, oh, cool. He's like, look, it doesn't really matter. Just listen, watch, and see if you can catch on to what their bias is. And then that'll just give you a little more, grounds to understand where they're coming from and interpret what they're saying. And so for me, when I see memes, I'm following this page and I know what their agenda is. It's very clear. It's like 2A, guns. Yeah. So what can I expect coming across there? Anything that is anti about how bad guns are. They're so stupid. But I know, well, obviously, because you're pro Second Amendment and pro guns, obviously you're going to be filling my feed with all the idiots who are against that, right? So once you know what their agenda is, then it's easy to interpret and get a little bit more truth, I think.
Yeah. That's good advice to be given as a kid.
I'm so smart now. Sorry.
I honestly, wow, Kiba's going at it today.
Can you hear him?
Yeah. Can you zap him or something?
Well, I could, but there's like 100 kids walking home from school outside, so he should be barking.
I feel like we'll get
grass.
I feel like we'll get great ratings if you were to just zap her during the show. PETA and everything will come at us.
Yeah, he doesn't listen that well. He's a lot like our entire family.
So I actually listen to Fox News, but I get sick and tired of a lot of that stuff because they'll repeat. So then I'll switch it to a local news radio station and listen to them. 590 KLBJ is the station if you're in the Austin area. So I'll listen to them. I only read something if I have to really figure out whether what I heard on the news was accurate or not.
Dire Straits.
I mean, I had to do a lot of it for our podcast, the mask, the vaccine. It's still going on. I'm getting annoyed with it. And then, of course, people shoot me.
Like, how do you know what to look up? You've heard a thing. What are your go-tos if you actually are so desperate that you have to read?
So what I'll do, I'll Google, and then I'll shoot every source that I see on there. I'll probably go 10 deep, and then I pretty much call it quits. I try to see who has consistency of data across the board. That way I have some kind of understanding as to what might be true or what might not be true. I'll give you a great example. Earlier, we were talking about a GIF that's out there. Joe Biden says, to prepare for hurricane season, the best thing to do is get vaccinated, right?
That's right.
That got shot all over my Instagram, Facebook. It was funny and stupid all at the same time. But when you actually search, Biden says to get a vaccine for hurricane season, then you find other videos that actually show the full statement, which he then goes on to say, you'd hate to go to a shelter and then all of a sudden you find out you're getting COVID while you're there. So now you're just stacking on issue after issue. But I still don't think your number one statement is get a vaccine for hurricane season. So
strikes me as funny. I feel like if your house just got blown into the ocean, you probably don't care if you're also coughing.
Here's the thing, like just right there, you have to go, I wonder what his bias is right now. He's passing mandates, telling you it's hurricane season, get a vaccine. Like clearly this guy has an agenda to get everyone vaccinated, right? Now, whether or not you agree with that or whatever, like that's something totally different, but just understanding that bias. Now, John, to echo some of your sentiments about searching Google and verifying. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a digital marketer, right? So I spend a lot of time on the web, and Google is like by far the hugest search engine, right? So the other day, a friend of mine and I were talking about getting reinfected with COVID, and he had said, Alton, if you've had COVID, the likelihood that you will get COVID again, naturally, right, is very, very small. And I hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard anyone say that. I hadn't heard anyone even like really talk about it. And he said that. I trust the guy, but I'm like, okay, trust but verify. So I go and I'm looking it up. And everything's talking about, oh, if you just get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, as I'm searching through Google. And I'm even looking at the studies. So I'm not just looking at an article, I'm looking at the study that the article references, and I'm reading that, and I'm reading their footnotes. And one of the studies said, if you're not vaccinated, you are 2.5 more times more likely to get COVID again than someone who was vaccinated. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know
if
that
you're
I agree with it, but
well, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I go, and this is what the article's saying. So get a vaccine, obviously. I'm reading the study now that the article references. It was like, I think like they compared 400 people to 200 people in this small area in Kentucky over this small period. And this was what the study was based on. So some small thing in Kentucky. And then at the bottom of the study, they had, here's all of the pieces of the puzzle that might throw all of our data out the window. Okay, so this was all found on Google. I found the articles. I went down to the study. Then I'm like, let me check a different search engine. I wonder what will come up. So I look up DuckDuckGo. All right. And now, because I'm still trying to figure out, like, what are my chances of getting reinfected after I've already had COVID? Because I've already had COVID. So now I'm digging and I'm finding totally different articles. Some of them are the same. I can tell the bias is like, get the vaccine, because they say, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine, get the vaccine. But then I'm finding other articles that are not saying that at all. They're like, hey, here's a study. This is what we're doing. Here's some numbers. Totally different thing. So just like the news, you have to check your search engines, and you need to read the fine print on the studies, like 400 people. So they're basing this whole thing off of 400 people in Kentucky, and they didn't include any demographics. I found another study off of DuckDuckGo that said the only people who get reinfected, the commonality is two or more comorbidities. That's the common factor of getting reinfected with COVID. But I had to spend 30 or 45 minutes researching that and digging, and I never would have found that on Google. I only found it on DuckDuckGo. I mean, maybe it's on there, but does that make sense?
Though. And that's kind of actually, that's where I was going to go with it, because prior to all things COVID, I used to enjoy listening to NPR on the radio, not because I agreed with the bias, but because their bias is so obvious, right? And they say it all in really nice, soft voices. Yeah. And so I don't mind listening to the news if it's all, kind of put in meditative, like it just was easier to listen to, even though a lot of it, like the bias was painfully obvious, right? But like Alton was saying, it's there. You can look at it through that lens. Since COVID, I don't find it bearable. Like, it's become such an agitated, you don't ever get the other side, even so that they can shoot it down. They don't bring it up, right? So that got me, most of my news now comes from online in some way or the other. And that got me paying attention to the search engine thing, because I realized that Google has an agenda. Like,
they're totally liberal at Google.
It's a completely real, like, what you are fed. I was starting to realize that I couldn't find things that I knew existed, right? So I've been using DuckDuckGo. I started exploring another search engine, which my brain is flatlining. I'll find it and I'll stick it up there for you guys. The idea is to not have your searches tracked. Makes it so that your odds of getting more information are better. Like, you won't, because that way it's not like, oh, they have a certain bent, they're going to look these places, so we're going to feed you what we think you want to know. If your searches are not being tracked, then I just feel like I have observed that my odds of finding a better diversity of information increase.
Y'all are really trying to get a good sponsorship going, aren't you?
Not from Google.
I mean, well, here's the thing though, is that it's very time consuming. And like, I went down this rabbit hole trying to figure some stuff out, which I did, which is why, like, for me, it's a good idea to, like, well, this is the benefit of modern social media, is that until they kick them off, you can follow them on social media, you know? So if you have someone that, you know, you're kind of in line with, or the opposite, you know, you can tune in to what they're saying. Just like you're saying, Barbara, with NPR. Hey, I probably don't agree with him, but I'm going to listen to him anyway, because I want to hear the other side. And I hear people, you know, on the left talking about how they, I don't know if enjoy is the word, but they listen to Fox News just because
Yeah.
they want to know what those crazy right wingers are saying. In my mind, though, they're all talking heads for somebody else. Or like the big thing for me, again, as a digital marketer, is like, I want people to click on my website. Okay. So we all know that the news does a lot of this, like, shock and awe, you know what I mean? And on the internet, they call it clickbait. You know, so on the nightly news, they're going to tell you all the bank robbers and DWIs and houses that burned down and all the terrible things that are happening in society. They're not going to be like, you know, yeah, we had this stay-at-home mom and she's just doing a great job raising her kids. Like, it's not going to make the news because nobody cares.
Yeah,
so same thing for stuff on the internet, right? Like, it's clickbait. It's a good title. And this is what people read. Like in a newspaper, you just read the headlines. You didn't read the article. Well, it's like, if you don't have the vaccine, you're 2.5 times more likely to get reinfected with COVID.
And to get hit by
that's
a
it.
hurricane.
Yeah, that too. Right. So you're just going to hear this, boom, the one thing, and then you just go on with your day, which I think kind of what we're trying to do here with the deciding factors, be like, whoa, stop just absorbing the clickbait into your brain and putting it in long-term storage here. Go, wait a second. It says that. Is that accurate? Maybe I'm gonna look into that a little bit more. And I think that's necessary these days with all the fact checkers.
Yeah.
Like, we need to be
speaking of
fact checking.
checkers, right? You do. Everybody needs to be fact checking the fact checkers. The name of that search engine that y'all need to look up is Brave. Brave.com.
Brave.com. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a new another way to glean information without getting tracked.
So speaking of, you know, looking things up and researching them, I was doing some research for the show, and I came across a Gallup poll. Looked at some other polls, and they are all pretty close and pretty similar. So we're gonna get you all's opinion and thoughts on this. So there's two types of media source that they talk about, right? They got the traditional news media, and then they have social media. The bias is the rating that people think that 62% of the people think that traditional media is biased. Social media jumps up to 80%. The inaccuracy, 44% of the people think that traditional news media is inaccurate. And then social media is 64% inaccurate. Then it even goes into a third category of misinformation. And Americans apparently think that 39% of traditional news media is misinformation. 65% of social media is misinformation. So it seems like the majority of people don't really trust what they're seeing and hearing.
Those numbers sound low to me.
Really? You think it's a
Yeah.
lot worse?
I think it's a lot worse. Let's look at the traditional media. Follow the money, right? Like, you got to be aware that it's a business at this point. In particular, like, free press does not totally exist in the United States right now. It's there's a really particular narrative. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that goes back to like news stations, newspapers. Are these are people there working as volunteers? Did the entrepreneur who started that start it to not make money?
Right.
I mean, unless there's like a nonprofit news organization that's not funded by the government.
And
Okay.
I'm not blaming them for that. Like, I think it's a business, but I think we gotta look at it
Sure.
and say it's a business. And so if they are all say owned by the same people, and so weirdly we're all saying the same news. Yeah, I think that number's low. Social media, you're probably closer, just in that there's no people have no filter and we take it as truth. So yeah,
So what's funny is I kept researching this, and one of the sites, and I don't know that I fully trust this because I couldn't find anything that matched it, is people believe that local news is more trustworthy. What are your thoughts on that?
I
Don't
mean, have
everybody
y'all
speak
ever
at once.
seen the? Have you ever seen the video where it starts off with like one
Everyday
reporter,
life issues.
and then it goes to the second reporter, and they're saying the same thing, and then it like doubles again. So now there's 4 reporters saying the exact same thing, and then it just keeps going and going and going to where the screen's full of like, 1,000 reporters that are literally reading off of the same script. So I have zero reason to believe that, someone in San Antonio is more trustworthy than, or Austin is more trustworthy than someone in some other location, because they're all reading the same teleprompter.
yeah, I guess I was wondering, and this honest question, I don't know the answer. Are there local news stations right now that are independently owned that are not owned by a larger conglomerate?
I don't think so. Not that I know
Kind
of.
of feel like it's maybe
Well-
presented like, oh yeah, these are your local people, but I feel like, again, who are they owned by? Who pays? Who signs their paychecks? Is going to dictate what news they give. So if it absolutely identically echoes what the national news is saying, I think that I kind of look at it like,
Well,
is
so
there-
there's one local station that we have down here that I don't think is owned nationwide.
What station is that?
God, I'm trying to think. So
I mean,
Bobby,
even radio stations, most radio stations are
Yeah.
not locally owned, right? They're all
Yeah.
Clear Channel. I think here locally, maybe 101X is not, like, it's like this alternative rock. I think that they're not.
no, I think Clear
Clear Channel,
Channel
but
and
I haven't listened to
iHeart
the
own
radio.
all the ones here in Austin. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, even the old ones, they've been bought out.
Right.
So, like, that maybe, if nothing else, if I would be surprised if someone's listening to our podcast and this is new news to them. But
I thought you were going to leave it there.
Hello,
Like, I'd be
there-
surprised if someone's listening to our podcast.
well, that may be true. I didn't even pull up the live feed today. So what I was saying is that Clear Channel, iHeart, like CNN, like it's all the same people. It's all the same people. And so I think it's a good question for us to ask. Now we've kind of talked about the logic, the reasoning, clickbait and shock and awe for ratings. I think most people can understand that. If I can step into the conspiracy part of
Ooh,
the
let's shine that tinfoil
news,
hat.
yeah, which is, facts. But if I wanted to take over a country without an army, I had to take over the information first, right? We have to control the information. We all know what propaganda is, just none of us believe that we're going to be victims of it in our own nation, right? But
I've got a
when
good
I
story
went
for you about that. Go ahead.
when I went to the Berlin Wall, I was there at like Checkpoint Charlie. And so this is now the Germans telling the story of their history many years later. And on the columns holding up, like a lot of the buildings were destroyed there in Berlin, and they've rebuilt some, but some they've left the way they were. And there was this tunnel that Hitler would use. And so when they were cleaning up this rubble, they found that tunnel, and this is next to the wall. So they had these columns, and on each side of these columns, there are people and who they were, a little bit about them, and when they went missing. And so what Hitler started doing before he used the army was anyone who was outspoken towards the government, had an opinion, he'd just have them arrested. To now, there was no one speaking against anything that he was trying to accomplish, which is the exact same thing that social media is doing right now. Oh, we don't like what you're saying, Trump. Boop. kick you off of Twitter. Oh, we don't like that y'all are talking about COVID and saying things like ivermectin and hydrochloroquine. Boop. We're going to cancel y'all's podcast because we don't like it. So I think we need to look at that and ask ourselves, if someone was trying to control the narrative, what would they do? Well, they'd certainly control all of the news and radio stations and social media outlets.
Barb, what was your story?
Okay, maybe this isn't totally edifying, but it did strike me as funny. Like, we don't think it's going to happen to us unless you have a kid that gets those checkup reminders from the Department of Health. Okay, so my sister has little people still. She's got like infants and toddlers, and they send you these like, here's your 4-month checkup. You know, here's things that ought to be happening growth-wise and development. And it used to be pretty innocuous. The most recent one that she sent, and you guys say, like, her oldest kid is 6 years old. So think about this, like nowhere near old enough for the vaccine. All of the paperwork was like showing these, I guess maybe they were supposed to look like they're smiling, but they're all masked, like families riding bicycles with their masks on. Families like, you need to stay healthy. The best way to get healthy is to get a vaccine. And so my sister, being my sister, takes the opportunity to teach her toddlers the word propaganda. And so daddy comes home at the end of the day. What did you learn today in school? But you know what? It's happening. Like, it comes in shiny pictures, and you think, if you are not paying attention, right, this is absolutely getting fed to you all over the place. We are absolutely experiencing propaganda in the United States. Like, this is not just a thing of history. This is not just a thing that Stalin did well. This is a thing that we're doing well today.
Yeah. So
Totally.
I just drew a blank.
John's a flatline. Should have went to Waterbury.
Dude.
So
I'll tell
it
you
does.
what.
There's one other sort of like approach to news that I'm wondering if you guys give any credence to, because I've been thinking about this anymore since I've given up listening to NPR. I just can't handle it. I do a lot of trying to find news sources that are independent, which means you often have to go onto their website. Sometimes podcasts. The Babylon Bee. Can we talk about the Babylon Bee? Like, it's
Sure.
if you are not familiar with Babylon Bee, it is a satire site, right? And so they've gotten hammered for misinformation, but it is satire. Like, you're not supposed to read it and assume that it is fact. However, the root of satire is in fact. That's why it exists.
That's why people don't like it, because it's calling out the ugly truth the way it needs to.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have taken to looking for, they're one example. I'm trying to find websites, podcasts that produce content on their own website apart from an owner, so maybe they get support from their readers. The Dark Horse podcast is one that I started listening to, in part because he is unabashedly liberal. And I think brilliant man. He and his wife, just incredibly intelligent. But I feel like, okay, you are observing the world around you from a viewpoint that I know that I disagree with. And I feel like it is an honest conversation, right? But he's one. I mean, he gets kicked off YouTube all the time. But I feel like if you can go to his website, right? So it's like, you're not making money off of me listening per se. Sources like that, I'm on the hunt for these days.
We should have had him on for our 25th Amendment podcast.
That actually would have been really interesting.
Way to go, intern Barb. Come on.
Yeah, now that I've thought of it, Mr. Weinstein, you should come on the podcast.
So, yeah, I just share a couple of memes from the Babylon Bee just to plug them, because
you want another sponsorship. Okay.
They do a great job.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah, I could handle that for sure. Be making a lot of friends.
Yeah. Elon Musk likes the Babylon Bee, John. Catch up.
So here's one from the Babylon Bee. It says, lockdown deemed a success, as everyone is now so obese they can't fit out of their own doors. Here's another one. There's the issues with the Border Patrol patrolling the border. And it says, Border Patrol ordered to chase immigrants with segways and pool noodles.
Okay, sorry, I really enjoy the bee. Do you guys ever look on It's Not the Bee?
Hmm.
Okay. So
No, I
they-
keep getting stuff from JoJo the dolphin.
Oh well, that's
that's
pretty
a
good stuff.
great
Yeah, that's
Instagram.
helpful. But
Jojo the dolphin.
that one
Yeah,
bee is
check
all
that out.
satire. It's Not the Bee is their non-satire site, so you can go but it's mostly just like kind of outrageous things in the news, like can you believe this is happening? Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Al.
But before we get into our deciding factor here shortly, though, I do want to point out, even though I listen to Fox News, I don't just believe every damn thing they say, because Fox News has screwed up. Luckily, they have come back and admitted when they screwed up, some of the times at least.
Probably not always. But.
Probably not always. I'll give a shout out to the New York Times. They have made some mistakes and came back and corrected what they said as well. I have yet to really see or hear much of CNN doing that. So
I feel like New
I
York
mean-
Times pretty much only does a retraction when they get sued to bits. Any of you guys follow Project Veritas?
Mhm.
Man, I like reading that guy. That is just
Yeah,
enjoyable.
that's another guy that's going to get shut down. I mean, there's a lot of people who are trying to have, do their own platform now to just offer anything other than the mainstream agenda. And so I just have to say, and forgive me, everyone, but it's like, if you're sitting there consuming what CNN is spitting out, I just have to completely question your ability for like clear judgment, like, in my opinion, it's like so biased on CNN. It's just not even, I can't take them seriously, like at all. So it's my opinion, guys.
final thoughts before we do the deciding factor? Anybody want to try to convince me otherwise?
Just
Got
trying to
questions
convince
about
you to
hanging
read,
out
John.
on Fox News. I don't know, but it's okay. You do you, boo.
All right, guys, here we go.
Now it's time for our deciding factor.
I don't have the fade on that anymore. I'm kind
I
of
so
sad.
obviously can't hear the music. It makes me sad. I'm watching you guys dance. I'm like, I can't hear anything.
Oh, I can't hear it either. I'm
You
just
just dancing.
pretending,
All right.
just imagining. Oh man, that's some good music.
Still dancing.
And now it's time for the deciding factor. Or something like
Or
that.
something like that.
Man, I don't know that you can really trust any news nowadays. I think it's gone downhill. There was one of the other statistics that I was looking at, but it stopped at 2009, and it was a big downward spiral as far as the trustability in news. And we're 12 years beyond, so I'm kind of just
Did you just say trustability?
dependability,
word?
trustability.
We're from
I
Texas.
mean, like
We make up
We
our
can
own
make
crap
rules
down
up.
here. Come on.
Y'all,
trustworthiness.
see, we wouldn't have
Sorry.
y'all if it wasn't for Texans.
Something just completely pinged in my brain. Go ahead. Anyway, trustability.
We say howdy down here too.
Said
real
the
word.
writer.
Unlike trustability. Okay, go ahead.
Now I don't have an opinion anymore. You just distracted me, squirrel. Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. You hear something, and depending on what it is, especially if it comes down to this medical bullcrap that we've been dealing with for the last 2 years, you've got to spend a lot more time to research it. And I mean, even then, things change constantly. And so I look back at what my wife has always said about news, and probably says it every morning to me because I keep talking to her about politics, and she hates politics. So she hangs up on me, and then I call her back and bug her some more. But, the thing to remember is the media does things for ratings. They need viewership. So they will twist and turn, say whatever they need to say to get you to watch those shows whenever they want you to. So some of these news stories, I believe they twist and turn and make it more blown in out of proportion than what it should be. So, like the Gabby Petito case going on right now, I'm hooked, unfortunately, more so just because I want them to catch this a-hole. So, yeah. But they're passing up on other stories. How do they choose which story to follow? And it comes down to ratings. So don't trust any of them. Fox, CNN, New York Times, none of it. You're going to have to research, and don't just research one article to back it up. You need to get more than one. That way you can see if there's, an agreed upon census.
Okay. Consensus. Yep. Got it.
I thought you were going to leave it alone too.
Oh, come on.
It's finished.
I was like, she's going to let him slide on that one. Nope.
I let a lot of other stuff slide today. Does that count? I respect our listeners. I don't want them to think that we don't know. Sorry.
Just Barbara.
Okay,
You're the only
just
one.
me. Okay, well, I care. Here we go. Okay, thinking about what news to trust. And all that I kept coming back to as I thought about this all week and examined my own news absorbing habits, this kind of comes down to worldview, right? And you need to have one before you digest news. If you don't actually know what you think about the world, what you think about who you are and your relationship to the society around you, then you are going to continue to get thrown back and forth between news media outlets that do not have your interest at heart. Okay, you got to understand that you're listening to the product of a business, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with having news be your business. Okay. I agree with John that you need to be taking in different news sources. I would take it maybe one step further and echo what Alton had said. You might need to be trying different search engines and compare between those because we do have so many mainstream media outlets today that are all owned by the same people. So even if you're comparing between CNN and ABC and CBS, well, you know what? They're all saying the same thing. Go figure. Okay. So to me, a big part of it comes down to developing your worldview. I think that comes down to how you're teaching your kids. I think it comes down to how you're developing your own thoughts. If you do not come into the news with already knowing who you are and what you believe, then I think it is impossible to, you should not be trusting news sources, period. If you don't already know what you think about the world. And then from there, use that as your filter. And newsflash, you have one. You have a worldview already. You don't get up and go into the world each day without having one. The question is whether or not it is a well thought out worldview. Is it consistent, right? So don't do it by accident. Develop your worldview using information other than the news, which changes all the time, right? Go for the things that don't change. And with that, I do plug sites like the Babylon Bee. Yes, it's satire, but that is part of an exercise in worldview, right? To be able to sort through what you're listening to. So try brave.com. Do what you think. Develop your worldview.
So I got a partial agreement.
Yeah.
I think for me, there's so many things that I like to know about, but I find difficulty finding the time to just, like the other day, I got in such a crazy rabbit hole of the COVID and the vaccines and reinfections and all of this. It just took a lot of time. It's like, look, I don't have 3 hours a day to figure out everything, so kind of how I started off is like, I follow people who I know and appreciate. And I feel like, on the social medias, and this may not be the best way, but this is how I do it. And so when something comes across a feed or they share something with me, at least I know where they're coming from. And then if it's appealing or controversial or whatever, if I need to know more, then I really try to go back to the source. So if they're quoting some study, I want to go read the study. I want to see what was published. I want to see it with my own eyes. And if, they're just like referencing something or whatever, then I kind of know their bias, and they can kind of summarize what they're doing, and I know the lens. So that allows me to get straight to the source. Even like, what's her name? The press secretary literally said the other day, talking about the $3.5 trillion spending thing, that and I'm going to put words into her mouth, but it's something like, you've got to be crazy to think that businesses are going to raise their prices just because we raised taxes. So I seen this in a meme. I saw this in a meme, and I'm like, this can't be right. This is one of the people that I follow who do not like Biden and the current administration making this up. And I go to the White House, and I find the video on YouTube that has all the context, and it's real. And so I'm like, oh, that was really said out loud, but I heard it come right out of her mouth. So it's kind of like, all right, I heard some crazy guy quoting her, then I go directly to the source. And now I can, Barbara, like what you said with the worldview, figure out, okay, do I really agree with this? Is this crazy? Oh, I do own my own business. And if they increase my taxes, I'm certainly increasing my prices. So she's nuts.
Oh, she's priceless though.
But
she's like a gift maker.
Yeah. But for me, like generally I can just be like, oh yeah, so-and-so quoted that. I can probably trust him. Yeah, that would have triggered me too if I was watching it real time. So that may be a way for some people to kind of find people that have your bias or don't have your bias, follow them. I've tried to follow people that have my opposite bias, but if I'm honest, like I just get way triggered when they say things. Just like, do you really believe that? I can't even hear you right now. This is so insane.
Oh no, they've got that bill they're going to pass that's going to be zero cost, but it's 3.5 trillion. So, but zero cost though.
Wow.
Yeah.
People believe this. When I was talking about, no, and this is the issue, and this is why you have to educate yourself. On Facebook, I was talking about, I shared the quarterly profits of Johnson & Johnson. Triggered so many people. It's like $500 billion in a quarter in profits.
But Allison, why?
They're like so mad at me for even posting, number one, because they're just mad, and number two, somebody literally said, as a comment, like genuine person, I thought that the vaccines were free. So I'm just like,
here's your sign. Okay.
Like, I love you, but you're so ignorant about this. You've got to do a better job. And this is why we have to dig a little bit, I think, and figure out that worldview. And like what John was talking about with the different, trusting the different news is like, well, who's choosing what to show, who gets to choose what they are showing us? Are they showing the profits of Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer? They're just saying, go get the vaccine. So now you have to go, why aren't they showing me their profits? So that's kind of my deal. Figure out the bias, follow people that have a similar bias so that you can gain access to more news that's probably more relevant to you without having to sift through all the studies yourself.
Yeah, just don't follow all the Hollywood stars because they're attacking you if you don't get the vaccine, like Howard Stern recently. It's
but maybe that's it. If someone really is all in on the vaccine, then maybe they should be following those people,
Although,
or not. But at least I've
got some questions if Howard Stern is your main source of news anyway.
This is true. This is true.
Questions, that's all.
I will say I did learn. Obviously, I need to expand my horizons to this DuckDuckGo. I've heard of it before in the past, but I have yet to use it. So I think it'll be.
It takes getting used to. Like it's a different. I think with Google, when we've done Google, at least this is what I found. When we've done Google for a long time, it's sort of a crutch. Like it's addicting to not have to think like, what am I really looking for? And with DuckDuckGo, like you actually have to think about what you're looking for. So initially, it takes some getting used to, but I found it way better.
Interesting.
If you want to know the truth, maybe that's what we should have said in the onset. It's like, do you just want news that makes you feel good, or would you actually want to know the truth that could make a difference in your life? Then that's what we're talking about here. You just want to get your brain massaged and like hypnotized to the mainstream agenda. Then this podcast was not for you.
Yeah, and Google's a good way to go for that.
Yep.
Yes.
Brain massage.
Just keep drinking the Kool-Aid, people.
All right, guys. Well, it's up for you to make up your own opinion on how do you choose which news source to actually follow and listen to. And we've given you our opinions. So like Barb said, just stick with us. We'll show you what you need to know. And we don't need to worry.
We probably have an agenda, but it's not backed by a bunch of lobbyists.
We haven't
unfortunately.
figured out our agenda yet.
Don't take our advice and just listen to us.
If you'd like us to start pushing the vaccine, Google, just send us some big checks. Just
Can
kidding.
buy-
We have morals.
Oh, we do? I would so vote for Biden if you wanted to give me a few million.
Really?
He's trying. He's trying once a month to pay for that. Never mind.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I can be bribed. I really can be.
Well, we're going to pay for it for him being in office for one term.
Yeah.
At least $3.5 trillion.
Different show though, because it's all free. Got that, people? It's all free. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's like if you just say it, then people believe it. Don't be those people. I mean, you can't be like super skeptical about everything all the time, but man, you gotta educate yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, guys, y'all are digging a new rabbit hole. Everyone, we'll see you next time on the Deciding Factor podcast. We don't know what we're going to talk about next, so stay tuned, watch our social media, follow us, and tell us what you want to hear us talk about, or not at all. So we'll still talk, just because we want to give you fake news. Right, guys?
I think it's totally true
Sure.
news. I don't know what you're talking about.
I need a tinfoil hat, I think. Can we do that? Can we like have it?
Shiny one.
There is a podcast called the Tinfoil Hat Podcast. Eddie
That's
Bravo.
brilliant.
I think we need to reach out to these people. They need to plug us as much as we're plugging them, right? All right, guys. We'll see you next time on The Deciding Factor. Everyone, say bye.
Later.
Bye.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor, giving you food for thought on real life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.